Welcome back. In part 1, you learnt the fundamentals: variables, loops, functions, and lists. In part 2, we go deeper. We'll master strings, collections, error handling, files, and even object-oriented programming. By the end, you'll be writing real, practical Python. Let's continue. Let's start with strings. Every character has a position, called an index, starting at 0. You grab a single character with square brackets, and a range of characters with a slice, a start, and a stop separated by a colon. Remember, the stop is not included, and negative indexes count from the end, so -1 is the last character. Strings come with handy built-in methods. Upper and lower change the case. Strip removes extra spaces from the ends, and replace swaps one piece of text for another. Just know that these don't change the original string, they return a brand new one. Two methods you'll use constantly are split and join. Split breaks a string into a list, usually at each space or comma. Join does the opposite. It glues a list of strings back together with a separator you choose. Together, they're perfect for processing text. Lists slice exactly like strings. Use a start and stop to grab a section, and add a third number, the step, to skip items. A step of 2 takes every second element, and a step of -1 is a neat trick to reverse the entire list. Lists are flexible. Append adds to the end, while insert places an item at a specific position. Remove deletes by value, and pop removes by index and hands the item back to you. Sort arranges the list in order, and reverse flips it. Here's one of Python's most loved features, the list comprehension. It builds a new list in a single readable line. You write the expression you want, followed by a for clause, and you can even add an if to filter items as you go. It's shorter and faster than a manual loop. A tuple is like a list, but it can't be changed after you create it. We write it with parentheses instead of square brackets. Because they're fixed, tuples are perfect for data that should stay constant, like coordinates. You still read from them by index, just like a list. A set is a collection with no duplicates and no fixed order. It's brilliant for removing repeats from data instantly. Sets also do fast membership checks, and math like unions and intersections, the combined or shared items between two sets. Let's revisit dictionaries. The get method safely looks up a key and returns a default if it's missing, avoiding errors. Keys, values, and items let you pull out each part, and looping over items gives you the key and the value together on every pass. Real data is often nested, collections inside collections. A common shape is a list of dictionaries, like a list of users, each with a name and an age. You reach inside by chaining brackets. First pick the item, then the key. This is exactly how most data from the web looks. Sometimes in a loop you need the position as well as the item. Instead of tracking a counter yourself, use enumerate. It hands you both the index and the value on every iteration. Clean and hard to get wrong. When you have two related lists, zip pairs them up. It walks through both at the same time, giving you one item from each on every loop. It's the tidy way to combine names with scores or questions with answers. Two keywords give you fine control inside loops. Break stops the loop completely and jumps out. Continue skips the rest of the current pass and moves straight to the next item. Use them to exit early or to ignore values you don't care about. You can place a loop inside another loop. The inner loop runs completely for every single step of the outer loop. This is how you work through grids, tables, or every combination of two lists. Just watch out. Nested loops can get slow on big data. Functions can be smarter. A default argument gives a parameter a fallback value so the caller can leave it out. And when calling, you can name your arguments directly. Keyword arguments make your calls clearer and let you pass them in any order. Sometimes you don't know how many arguments you'll get. Star args collects any number of positional values into a tuple. Double stags collects named arguments into a dictionary. Together, they let a single function accept almost anything. A Python function can return more than one value at once. Just separate them with commas. Behind the scenes, it packs them into a tuple. On the other side, you can unpack them straight into separate variables in a single line. Scope decides where a variable lives. A variable made inside a function is local. It only exists there. Variables defined outside are global and can be read anywhere. Keeping most of your data local makes programs easier to understand and debug. A lambda is a tiny one-line function with no name. You write the keyword lambda, the inputs, a colon, and a single expression. They're handy for quick, throwaway logic, especially when another function needs a small function passed to it. Map and filter transform whole collections at once. Map applies a function to every item and gives back the results. Filter keeps only the items that pass a test. Paired with a lambda, they're a compact alternative to writing a loop. Programs fail, files go missing, users type nonsense. Error handling lets you deal with it gracefully. You put risky code in a try block, and if something goes wrong, the except block runs instead of crashing. You can even catch specific errors by name. There's more to error handling. A finally block always runs, whether or not there was an error, perfect for cleanup. And when something is truly wrong, you can raise your own error on purpose with a clear message explaining what happened. You don't have to build everything yourself. Python ships with a huge standard library. You bring in a module with the import keyword. The math module gives you square roots and pi. The random module lets you pick random numbers or shuffle a list. The datetime module handles dates and times. You can grab the current moment with now, pull out the year, month, or day, and format a date into readable text. It's essential for logs, schedules, and anything time-based. Let's save data that survives after the program ends. Files. The with statement opens a file safely and closes it automatically. You can write text to it or read it back later. This is your first step toward programs that actually remember things. Now for the big one, object-oriented programming. A class is a blueprint for creating your own type of object. The special init method sets up each new object, and self refers to the specific object being built. Think of a class as a cookie cutter, and objects as the cookies. Objects hold data, called attributes, and actions, called methods. Attributes are the variables that belong to the object, like a name or a balance. Methods are functions inside the class that use that data. This bundles related information and behavior into one neat package. Inheritance lets one class build on another. A child class automatically gets all the attributes and methods of its parent, then adds or changes whatever it needs. It saves you from repeating code, and it models real relationships. A dog is a kind of animal. Let's tie it together with a small bank account class. It stores a balance as an attribute and has deposit and withdraw methods that change it. We even guard against overdrawing with an if statement. In a few lines, you've combined classes, methods, and logic into something genuinely useful. Take a moment. You've covered a lot. Advanced strings and lists, comprehensions, tuples, sets, and rich dictionaries, error handling, modules, files, and the foundations of object-oriented programming. You're not a beginner anymore. The best way forward is to build something you actually care about and look things up as you go. Every professional does exactly that. Thanks for watching part 2. Now go build something great.